Before we get started proper, I have some small things that I want to address. As of the Season 1 Reloaded update, it would appear that all of Julie Nathanson's lines as the Sam AI and Aetherella have been replaced. This comes as a result of Nathanson taking part in the SAG-AFTRA strike against video game companies like Activision Blizzard over the company's refusal to offer AI protections to actors' voices and their likenesses. Now, firstly, I want to say that I don't blame Treyarch for this. They have deadlines, and Activision refusing to bargain with the union has completely boned them in this instance, like usual. Secondly, I wholeheartedly support SAG-AFTRA and any and all voice actors who decide to strike to protect themselves. On screen now and in the description is a link to a petition with a ton of signatures already that calls on studios like Activision to make the deal necessary to get these people back to work. So, with that covered, on with the review. Revealed during the Xbox showcase on June 9th, 2024, Terminus is the first on-disc experience for Black Ops 6 Zombies. Taking place 6 years after the end of Forsaken, we are finally caught up to speed on what has become of the Requiem cast. After a miraculous breakout reintroducing us to Dr. William Peck and his new bestie Maya Aguinaldo, Weaver, Gray, Carver, Strauss, and Raptor 1 come together with one goal in mind, to finally escape Terminus Island and find the one man who started all of this, Edward Richtofen. So, without any more delay, let's dive right into Terminus. Real quick, before we get into what I love about Terminus, I just want to mention that this review will be looking at the map as it was when it launched. So despite the fact that we're well into Season 1 by this point, I'll be saving the discussion for those changes for my Citadel des Morts review coming early next year. And since I covered the basic systems and gameplay changes of Black Ops 6 in my Liberty Falls video, I won't be mentioning them here either. So let's jump right into the starting story and map progression. After the previously described reunion of our cast with Peck and Maya, the team is assigned their roles. Peck and Strauss hole up in the guards room to find Richtofen. Stony Raptor 1 Maddox is sent to secure exfil, while Weaver, Carver, Maya, and Gray set off to locate Maya's brother. Players are immediately presented with their first objective, to restore power to the island to aid Strauss and Peck, and this takes the form of regional power switches that, unlike Origins or God Help Me Alpha Omega, cannot be turned off after the initial setup. When activated, it starts a defense objective, which for 30 seconds, purple-eyed zombies will attack the Ethereum Maturation Pod, AMP for short, and must be defended in order to progress. After the generator wraps up, players can progress down 2 separate paths, both of which will get them to the next AMP to continue restoring the island's power. Here is where the actual split happens. After AMP 2 is turned on, players can choose one of 2 paths. The first will take players past the large Aetherium cannon on the gun deck and Deadshot Daiquiri, further into the cave which houses Speedy Cola, and the other will take them through the boat tower, past Elemental Pop, and down to the mining tunnels where PhD Flopper resides. Regardless of which path players choose, they will end up in the research lab in the depths of the island. Here is where Project Janus did the bulk of its experimentation under the direction of Dr. Revati Modi, a twisted scientist who not only was picked by director Richtofen to head his research division, but also impart his judgment on the Requiem cast. After the final AMP is turned on, full power will be restored to the island, and players will be able to dive into the waters below to raise the inclined lift out of the depths and gain access to Willard's projector. With basic map progression covered, let's get into Terminus. Just like Liberty Falls, I have to commend how easy it is to jump right into this map. While some may find it simplistic for the map that was touted by Treyarch to be the harder experience, I find that being able to pick up and get right into the action from the get-go is a luxury that we as Zombies players should get to enjoy. On the flip side though, I love how different this map is compared to Liberty Falls. Where that map is incredibly wide open and filled with multiple areas to properly kite zombies, Terminus is comprised of multiple winding pathways, all of which are incredibly claustrophobic and make for some intense gameplay moments. If you aren't careful on high rounds, it's not entirely uncommon to get completely surrounded and cut off from where you're trying to get to. Connecting the lower levels and the rest of the island is the aforementioned inclined lift, which can be summoned in both areas and provides not only an incredibly handy traversal method, but also an additional pathway that helps when training in either the rec yard or the lab respectively. On top of that, Terminus also features a tactical raft, which can be used to escape the main island facility and explore the external islands and the shipwreck that inhabit the nearby waters. Although there isn't much on the islands, it's cool to see a zombies map that isn't entirely linear and gives players the chance to explore to their heart's content. And while Liberty Falls also gave a safe haven for both styles of play, Terminus is definitely more oriented towards people who like to train, with the rec yard, the gun deck, and, if you're feeling frisky, the exterior islands and biolab, all providing wide open spaces for multiple players to coexist and circle up. But see, those are just simple things that Treyarch has been getting consistently right since Cold War. Let's get into what really makes Terminus stand out, starting with the return of the playable crew. Ever since Cold War released, players have been clamoring for the return of a core set of characters that we not only listen to, but can play in order to better experience the story, and that time is finally here. And while it still feels like Treyarch was readjusting to this style of writing in this map, the character conversations are so awesome to have back. Getting to hear the joint experience of being trapped on the island through Weaver, Carver, and Gray, in conjunction with Strauss and Peck on the radio, makes for some incredibly interesting story stuff as we get caught up.
Strauss, any idea why a dimensional fucking breach happened right after I set your sorry asses free?
I would rather not speculate beyond saying that every plan involving you tends to turn to excrement.
You know what? You two keep entertaining yourselves. I'm too busy rolling up my sleeves and getting dirty.
And introducing Maya as the new kid on the block, but fleshing that out through the map and not intel like perhaps Cold War would have done, is some great storytelling. This flows well into the overall vibe of the map. Terminus does a really good job of capturing the aesthetic of the Pacific Island prison, like its older brother Zetsubo Noshima did before it. However, where this map differs a bit is that it isn't inherently trying to be scary like Zetsubo was. Here, Terminus is more interested in the environment we find ourselves in, and catching us up to speed on the last 6 years of in-game time. Just like Liberty Falls, there's several little environmental cues that play out, like Janus soldiers being attacked by zombies, zombies trapped under debris, and even some test subjects who awaken after the power is restored. Moving on, let's talk about our new waffle weapon, the DRI-11 Beam Smasher. Created by Janus technical officer Anya Tanovsky, the Beam Smasher is a unique prototype with multiple methods of attack. Its primary fire is a laser beam, which slowly kills zombies when in contact with the laser.
That's right, this is what you get! My super laser pass!
Alternatively, players can hit LT or their console equivalent to use the sonar beacon attached to the gun and briefly weaken zombies for themselves and their team. When weakened, zombies not only move slightly slower, but also take increased critical damage, meaning they're easy targets for anyone that's paying attention. And finally, the last ability, which is more passive, is when the Beam Smasher completely runs out of the mag, it'll proc a little explosion, which knocks back and kills zombies around the user, giving them the chance to breathe and complete a reload. Just like every other map since 2020, there are multiple ways to get the Wonder Gun, including the Mystery Box, and more importantly, its unique buildable quest, which I'm going to cover now because it's just so interesting and fun to do. After restoring power, Peck will mention an encrypted file that states,
"Don't cut yourself on this sharply observed portrait." So you did it! Well done!
Not really sure where that came from, but the actual clue is, can be found if you're so inclined, though most will be refused. This means that players must take the inclined lift and shoot generators using a pack-a-punch gun with deadwire equipped to unlock Tanovsky's secret office. Here, players will find a zombified Tanovsky, and after killing her, she will drop a key fob, which gives players access to a briefcase near Elemental Pop. Upon opening it, players will be given the multiphasic resonator, which, when placed on Tanovsky's computer, will begin a little puzzle. In the room, there are two whiteboards, one with a bunch of symbols and a table with numbers assigned to them, and another with some simple algebraic formulas. Players must then scavenge for 3 computers around the map, which give them an X, Y, or a Z and a symbol that they must remember. Once retrieved, you can return to the lab and begin to solve the puzzle. So, using your 3 symbols, you look at the whiteboard with the chart, and say you have the first symbol at the very bottom as your X, which means your X value is 11, combining the numbers where the table intersects. So after repeating this for your other 2 symbols, you can begin filling in your algebraic problems and solving all of them. You have the code for the PC. Now, if you feel that's too much, Peck actually offers you the chance to skip all of what I just said and pay him 5,000 points to just get the code right off the bat. Not only is the puzzle incredibly well thought out and fun to do, but this little skip is so in character for Peck that I love flipping between both every time I play. Regardless of what you choose to do, after entering the correct code and ending the current round, you can come back and pick up the Resonator and take it to Castle Rock Island, and place it in the electric bubble. Here, players must kill zombies in order to charge the ammo canister for the Beam Smasher. This process must be done 3 times on 3 of the islands, and once the final ritual is complete, players can return to the office and build the funny gun. Alongside the new wonder weapon, Terminus reintroduces us to one enemy, and also brings along an entirely new enemy type, starting with the Parasites. These little flying fellas make their grand return after their last appearance in Revelations, and that was 2016, by the way. This time around, they actually evolve out of the vermin enemies that have a chance to spawn out of zombie corpses during the round. And in terms of new enemies, we have the Amalgam, a horrifying clash of the Dark Aether and Modi's Amalgamation Project. This elite enemy type charges you, and should you get too close, can reach out and grab you, biting you and throwing you back into the horde.
What is the charge? Eating a meal? A succulent Chinese meal?
And just like all the other enemy types in Treyarch's library, like the Crimson Nosferatu or the Mimic who can grab you, when the animation is finished, zombies will briefly de-aggro in order to give you a chance to reposition. Before we move on to side Easter eggs, I want to briefly touch on the traps, specifically the Ethereum cannon. I was absolutely gobsmacked when they showed it off in the reveal trailer for the map. The sight of a cannon with an incredibly violent startup that just shoots a massive beam into the sky and sucks up zombies is incredibly raw, and something that fits right at home with the map. And while these don't work as well, the tentacle traps are also fairly interesting and offer something similar to the electric gate traps from ye olde zombies. Now before I get into the main quest and storyline of the map, let's jump into the side Easter eggs, and just like Liberty Falls, this map is packed full of little goodies for the player to go and do just to be rewarded. And also, just like Liberty Falls, I'll be discussing these in order of most useful to just fun little things the players can do. Starting off with arguably the most useful of them all, the free Perkaholic quest. After restoring power to the island, players will notice groups of small red fishies in the water that surround the island, and after killing a whopping 50 of them with grenades or explosives of any kind, players will be granted all perks on the map. On that note, this map features a pretty shocking number of free perk Easter eggs. These include the Jail Cell quest, which sees players killing 3 waves of enemies trapped in cells in the biolab. These waves feature zombies, vermin, and finally a group of manglers. Then, they're scouring the waters around the island to find these little loot caches, which not only gives salvage, points, armor plates, and the occasional chance of an ether tool or pack crystal, but the most important part is that after finding all 10, players are rewarded with a free perk. After that, there's the Spore Easter egg, which has players tracking down islands covered in the spores from MWZ across 3 separate rounds, and then going to the sea caves to destroy a few more spores for a free perk power-up, as well as other loot drops. And the final free perk, and arguably the coolest one conceptually, is the Whack Crab quest, which takes place on Crab Island. Shocker. After throwing a grenade at a crate of crabs, 3 separate minigames of Whack-A-Mole will become available. The first will reward the player with a perk can, the second, a free blue weapon, and the final one, a shitload of points, all of which are incredibly helpful for early game setup. Moving on from perks, Terminus features an equivalent feature to Liberty Falls Vault. This time around, the armory in your stamina can be entered, and should the players have a key, they can open the weapon lockers for weapons, perks, score streaks, and more. Then there's the boat Easter egg, which after scouring for a small RC boat off of one of the 3-man islands, players can compete in a small race to see who can complete the circuit the fastest. Just like Liberty Falls, Terminus features a way to spawn each core power-up, including the recently discovered Fire Sail, which can only be found after shooting all of the other power-ups. I also want to add that this also works on Liberty Falls, so pretend that I just, knew about it in that video and just didn't show you for the lulz. Got it? Cool. After that, there's the Meteor Easter egg, which involves shooting 2 radio towers with dead wire and using the Ethereum cannon to blast a meteor out of the sky. If you follow it as it makes contact with the ground, you can go to the landing site and pick up loot like salvage, points, and even a wonder weapon. There's the Talisman quest, which sees the players finding a watch in the waters and bringing it into the sea caves. After knocking a wall down using melee macchiato, players can return the watch to the corpse of Captain Greg, who will then direct the player to 3 traders from his old crew on the islands around the map. Going to these spots and using a Molotov or thermo grenade on the 3 skeletons will summon an HVT Mangler that must be defeated in order to retrieve the cursed coins. After all 3 are picked up, players can return to Greg and they will be rewarded with 3 orange weapons. However, the quest doesn't just end there. If the player waits until the next Parasite round and visits Crab Island, There will be a buried chest that can be opened, and in it will be the Cursed Talisman. While equipped, the player holding it will have permanent double points, but the catch is there's an occasional chance for you to lose 500 points when you take a hit. After this, we've got Mega Stuffy. Players can collect several stuffed animals scattered around the map, and after all are collected, they can be combined to form Mega Stuffy, a follower who can not only kill zombies for a short period of time, but can also revive players while he's active. Then, there's the basketball Easter egg, which can be done by putting on your Jordans and landing a basket. If done properly, you'll be rewarded with 2,000 points, which can be doubled using the talisman and the free double points for a whopping 8,000. The last major side Easter egg is the cooking quest. This one involves using the red fish that I mentioned during the Perkaholic quest. Should you pick one up and take it to the mess hall, you can combine it with the oil and one of several other ingredients around the map to temporarily buff your currently equipped ammo mod. However, if you don't want to do that, you can actually just use the basic cooked fish to get your 5,000 points back from Dr. Peck after cheating to get the Beam Smasher. With the big ones out of the way, let's rapid fire these smaller ones, starting with the air tank side Easter egg, which can be found under the inclined lift using an explosive of any kind. You can dislodge this rock and pick up the air tank for an increase to your breath while underwater. Perfect for finding the crates that I mentioned earlier. Then there's the teleportation quest. Should you find yourself on Temple Island, you can go over to the drawing of the Sentinel artifact and use the alt fire of the Beam Smasher to teleport back to the spawn area. After that, there's our first jump scare Easter egg since 2019's Togger Totem. Should you take the elevator from the spawn down to the biolab and jump while it begins moving, you can get an eerie little event similar to Disney's Tower of Terror ride. And finally, just like Liberty Falls, there's a pool table that can be shot to get a free 100 points, which never hurt anybody. Christ, that's a lot of Easter eggs. I guess Treyarch wasn't kidding when they said they packed this one full, huh? So, with all of that covered, I think now it's time to get into the story and main quest for this map. So, let's begin with the intro cutscene. Once again, taking place 6 years after the end of Forsaken and the arrest of Requiem's senior staff, we catch up with them on a remote island in the Pacific. Being overseen by Warden Ernst Duffer and Dr. Revati Modi, the group is tortured and interrogated to garner information about the Dark Aether, as well as enact Richtofen's will upon them. During one stormy night, Duffer is assassinated by a shadowy figure, who turns out to be Maya Aguinaldo. Maya releases the team and brings out Dr. William Peck, who, until then, was presumed dead. The team establishes an uneasy alliance under the banner of tracking down and killing Richtofen. Just then, at the same time that an outbreak starts in West Virginia, a Dark Aether breach occurs at the facility, and the team must fight to survive while trying to find Maya's brother and a way to escape the island. As Weaver, Carver, and Gray navigate this new yet familiar world they find themselves in, Maya is thrown into the deep end of a Dark Aether breach, and questions how much of this is the group's fault. After restoring the power, Strauss and Peck discovered that the files regarding Nathan's whereabouts were locked down after the power shut down, and were moved to a secure hard drive somewhere on the island. They also discovered that Modi escaped the island shortly before the outbreak began, and is currently floating in the water on her submarine, which is strapped with Peck's inversion warheads, last seen in the Ural Mountains during Operatia Inversia. After retrieving the pieces necessary to construct the Beam Smasher, the team recovers the hard drive from the mouth of one of the nearby tentacle traps. Handing the drive to the dynamic duo reveals that Nathan is being held in a secure container in the center of the lab that requires a code to unlock. Interacting with the cell will open the slot, and Nathan will show his face, begging the team to help save him. Players then must scour the map to find 3 digits, one from the clock in the interrogation room, another on a playing card in the mess hall, and the final from a Days Without Incident sign in the mechanical room. Taking these to the containment unit and inputting them will unlock the door, and after turning the valves on the side will reveal Nathan's untimely fate. After asking too many questions, Modi used Nathan as a subject for the Amalgam Project, and Maya and the team must unfortunately kill him. After beating him, a small yet effective IGC plays, where Maya has to mercy kill her younger brother. While the team comforts her over her loss, the TVs turn on and Modi comes over the intercom to taunt the team. From here, their objectives change. Instead of trying to leave, they reason they have to kill Modi in honor of Nathan. Following this, Peck discovers a potential way to recall Modi's sub to the island using the Synaptic Algorithmic Module, SAM for short, to override the controls. After diving into the waters and retrieving Security Officer Owen Guthrie's keycard, the team can hack into the island's computers, but the system is still offline. Heading off to the boat, players can climb up into the wreckage and find a pair of node connectors that, after a small lockdown, can be taken to spots around the island to fix the terminals. The SAM AI will come alive, and after some questioning by Strauss, reveals that it was merely based on Agent Maxis and has near unlimited access to Janice's files. But she requires one thing: the team to hack into the buoys around the island in order to bounce the signal to bring Modi's sub back in range of the island. Players can go to the spawn area and retrieve the hacking device from Peck to complete this. However, after the final buoy is hacked, Modi will once again come over the intercom and cackle at the fact that the Apocalypse Protocol has been activated. The team is then given 5 minutes to defuse 3 bombs, lest the island be blown to smithereens. After this, the final encounter becomes available. Another IGC plays where the submarine resurfaces and Modi comes out to lambast the team. While she raves and rants, something bubbles beneath the surface, and Patient 13, formerly Owen Guthrie, reveals himself. Modi is immediately killed, and the inversion warheads are once again lost to time. However, there's no time to mourn that, as the team must face off and defeat the squid creature. The boss fight follows the tried and true 3-round format, with different weak spots and attack patterns, culminating in 2 insta-kill attacks during Wave 3. One that involves the creature's tongue, and another that can actually be overridden if enough damage is delivered. After it is defeated, Sam will mock Peck and congratulate the team, but not before beckoning them back to the security room. Here, Sam delivers some of the biggest lore dumps of all time. She reveals that Richtofen is currently searching for the Sentinel artifact, an ancient device that is the key to unlocking a material known as Prima Materia. Not just that, but he is also holding demonology professor Gabriel Kraft hostage in the French Principality of Avalon, and is in cahoots with the French Syndicate, who not only employ Ravenov, the former Omega soldier who helped us during the events of the Cold War, but are also the ones behind Nathan's capture and entrapment on Terminus Island. Sam also reasons that while she can't tell where the director is, she assumes he's en route to Avalon in order to extract the information from Kraft himself. Though Strauss rages over the nonsense of alchemy and magic that Sam has shown them, the rest of the team agrees that they must head to Avalon in order to stop Richtofen in his tracks. This one cutscene has some of the most batshit crazy and fanficky endings to any zombies map of all time. Not only did they directly reference Vanguard, which most thought would be thrown to the wayside like a discarded piece of shit, but they also looped Chaos back in. You know, just one of Treyarch's most high-profile and unfortunate failures in a long-ass time. As someone who loves both of these stories, it's incredible to see them back in the plot and begs a ton of questions for the future of Dark Aether, like, how much of Chaos is canon? What has Kraft been up to since the end of the war? And on that note, what happened to all of the demons from Vanguard? Just like Liberty Falls, all of these questions are so intoxicating, and the true lure of this game, even all these weeks later, I still can't believe this is actually going to happen. Besides the batshit crazy ending, the Terminus Easter egg works because while it isn't that much harder than the best of Cold War like Maurid or Toten, it still offers some complexity and caps off with one of the best boss fights in a long time, Patient 13, which also has one of the most banging boss fight themes of all time for a Treyarch Zombies game. And another fantastic aspect of this is how the crew interacts with each other throughout the quest. These little bits of dialogue between the team of them adjusting to each other and trying to just readjust to this changing world is a fantastic way to also reintroduce the players to the world of Dark Aether if they skipped the past few games. Though the intel for this map isn't perfect, I also appreciate how it fleshes out the time the crew spent on the island, as well as exactly what Project Janus was up to on Terminus Island after all this time. As Dr. Modi longs for a higher position closer to the research that Richtofen is doing at the Liberty Falls facility, she instead is trapped on a freezing island in the Pacific, researching and messing around with the biodiversity of the Dark Aether. And before we move on to what didn't work for this map, it's once again time to get into fucking cool things that Black Ops 6 does that isn't necessarily big enough to get its own section, but still deserves to be mentioned. First off, I want to talk about Maya for a second. While I think she really hits her stride in Citadel, her inclusion is incredibly seamless and feels like she's been a part of this universe since day one. Something that I left out of the side Easter egg chat is the inclusion of the shovels and dig sites around the map. Just like Origins before it, if a player picks up a shovel, they can dig around in specific dig piles that can give equipment, guns, perks, and occasionally a vermin enemy. Then, there's the fact that you can dive straight off of the upper platform down into the biolab, making traversal between the two spaces incredibly seamless. Treyarch could have totally put up invisible walls if the lift wasn't at the top, but they didn't, and I really appreciate that. I also just want to point out this spot for camping. The room where you build the beam smasher is actually so goated if playing in a co-op match. It's such high-octane fun, and paired with the turret augment for energy mine, can be a total cakewalk to round 50+. And finally, the music for the map. Our new song, Can You Hear Me Come In, sung by Megan Rice, with backing vocals from franchise sweetheart Maluka, alongside tracks like Nathan and the aforementioned Patient 13, are all certified hood classics, and the game's barely 2 months old. As always with my reviews, it's time to get into what I don't think works on this map, starting with the exterior islands. While I praise them for their exploratory purposes, I think that ultimately they lose some of their charm on repeat playthroughs. If you aren't doing side quests or building the wonder weapon, there's almost no reason to visit any of them, and on top of that, the boat that houses the Wonder Fizz is strapped full of zombie spawns, so going over there during the high rounds to get your perks back is almost certain death. Next, I'd like to talk about the traps, and more specifically the tentacle trap. While I find its design cool, its locations aren't in very useful positions for training, and also the fact that it can grab the player sometimes, even if they are crouched, can almost bone anyone trying to quickly escape the horde that's following them. And you know what, since we're talking about poorly placed items, the elevator. Its placement tying the labs and the spawn is kinda useless. You leave a really tight quarters area to go to an even more close quarters area. And don't even get me started on if you get trapped in there with a zombie, or a group of zombies. Good luck, man! My second to last genuine gripe is with the Pack-a-Punch lift. Its movement may seem random, and that's reason enough to dislike it for some people. However, there is actually a way to tell if it's going to move soon, and this takes the form of the PC opposite of the Pack-a-Punch. Every round, the bars will fill up more and more until finally the lift moves. My issues with this are, it really isn't conveyed to the player very well, and also, calling the lift manually doesn't reset this timer, so sometimes you can call it back to the rec yard, and immediately the next round it'll just leave again, making it a super inconvenience. The last real big issue I have with this map, and this is kind of a dual one, is the lack of deep intel and how one-note Modi comes off in the map. Starting with Modi, all of her dialogue is kind of written like a villain of the week level character, and kind of acted out poorly as well. However, her screaming no during the quest is pure gold.
None of you can begin to appreciate the things I accomplished here. You aren't qualified to pass judgment on...
And as for the intel, some of it is good, like the one titled Listen, which has Tanovsky talking about the voices of a German woman and a Russian man coming from the amps. However, there's a ton of nothing on this map, and also a lot of things that just aren't quite as explained. More backstory on why Richthofen trusts Modi so much, what the extent of the Amalgam project is, and all these little things would definitely help to flesh out the map's lore even more. Like, remember during Forsaken when we got that radio of Peck and Kravchenko using the particle accelerator, showing us how the experiment went wrong? That kind of little thing is useful for players trying to get into the story, but alas, it just wasn't meant to be. Now, on to my nitpicks. While I love training as much as the next Zombie Slayer, I find this map's lack of spots to hold out a little strange. The spot I mentioned previously in the good is cool, but I would have liked to see more love for the players who like to hunker down with their buddies, like more of the recent Zombies maps have provided. Next up, there's the tentacle, and while I don't hate it, there's definitely times where it gets annoying. In order to balance the exploratory feature of this map, there is a countermeasure that the game enacts if you've been out in the water for too long. If it detects you on the water, it'll spawn a tentacle that can summon a gas cloud to chase you until you get back to land, which can make simply trying to do something like find the boxes in the water a bit annoying. And on the topic of the islands, this is definitely just me being lazy, but I have to say, if a SAM trial spawns on the outer islands, my ass is not going over there. I'm just gonna wait for it to respawn somewhere on the main island. And the final point I want to talk about is how weak the Beam Smasher's beam is. For being the main function of the Wonder Weapon, it's kinda weak sauce and takes way too long to kill anything on the field in the high rounds. But the alt-fire is so useful for both solo and co-op that, honestly, I can just look past it all. And here we are again at the end of yet another Big Sam review. Terminus was definitely the map I was looking forward to the most pre-launch, and I am so glad that it lived up to the hype. It's got a cool Easter egg, fun characters, a good Wonder Weapon, and just a great atmosphere that makes it such a fun experience time and time again. Between this and Liberty Falls, Black Ops 6 arguably has one of the best launch offerings in a long time, which makes me so glad to see. With these maps covered, soon enough it'll be time for us to look at Citadel Day More and all the content that came out during Black Ops 6 Season 1. But for now, we must say adieu. As always, I want to say thank you for tuning in and listening to me yap in your ear for however long this video ends up being. But also, since this will be my last video for 2024, I want to thank all of you for the support of me coming back randomly with the Vanguard Zombies and Modern Warfare Zombies video, and the Liberty Fall review as well. And I want to wish you and everyone you love a happy holidays and happy new year as well. We've got a banger year ahead in 2025, and I can't wait to talk about it with you all soon. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Take care.
Do you like my sword, 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 my diamond sword, sword? You cannot afford, afford my diamond sword, sword. Even if you could, I have a